A white Toyota sat parked outside 14 Riverside Drive for 3 weeks before anyone died. It did not move. It had no deliveries to make. The driver sat inside, watching the guards, watching the gate, watching the timing of every shift change. No one thought to ask why. And on January 15, 2019, at exactly 2:30 in the afternoon, the car finally had somewhere to be. The first sound was not a gunshot. It was a boom, deep and flat, coming from the Secret Garden restaurant on the ground floor of the complex. 7 people were dead before the smoke cleared. Then the grenades hit the front gate. Then the cars outside started burning. The Toyota pulled up, 4 men stepped out, and the doors to the DusitD2 Hotel swung open. As the first explosions echoed through the lobby, how many people inside the hotel realized this was not a robbery, but a coordinated terrorist siege? Most of them didn't. Not yet. Guests grabbed their bags, workers ducked behind counters, phones lit up with calls that wouldn't connect, and somewhere above them, on the upper floors, 4 heavily armed men began moving, floor by floor, looking for anyone still breathing. The 14 Riverside Drive complex sits in Westlands, one of Nairobi's most polished districts. Glass towers, corporate offices, a luxury hotel with a spa and rooftop views. It was the kind of place that felt untouchable, and that was exactly why they chose it. The group behind the attack was Al-Shabaab, a militant organization based in neighboring Somalia, responsible for some of the deadliest terrorist strikes in East Africa. Their goal was not just to kill, it was to send a message to Kenya. No place is safe, no business district, no 5-star hotel, nowhere. This was not their first attack on Kenyan soil. 6 years earlier, in 2013, they stormed the Westgate shopping mall and held it for 4 days. Back then, the response was chaotic. Units argued, command collapsed, soldiers accidentally fired on each other. Dozens of civilians died who might have been saved. Kenya swore it would never happen like that again. But swearing is easy. Delivering is something else entirely. The man who built the plan for the DusitD2 attack was named Ali Salim Gichunga. He went by Abu Sakina. He was Kenyan. He knew the streets. He had spent weeks sitting in that white Toyota, mapping every guard, every camera, every gap in the fence. His team carried Type 56 rifles, AK-47 variants, taken from Somali military outposts. They had fake IDs, safe houses, and a mobile money trail carefully hidden across multiple accounts. Their first move was designed to scatter. The suicide bomb at the restaurant pulled attention downward. The grenades and burning cars sealed the exits. By the time any coordinated response could form, Gichunga and his team were already inside, splitting into pairs, moving up through the building, hunting. While civilians hid silently behind locked hotel doors, Hu was moving through the dark hallways hunting room by room. Gichunga's men were. They moved methodically. They fired through wooden doors. They threw grenades into stairwells. They checked maintenance shafts and ceiling panels. In the office blocks, workers hid under desks and pressed their hands over their own mouths to keep quiet. In the hotel rooms, guests stacked mattresses and dressers against their doors and turned their phones face down so the glow wouldn't show under the crack. Hundreds of people were trapped. Most of them had no idea if help was coming. Some of them climbed upward, toward the roof, because up felt safer than down. The Kenyan General Service Unit arrived fast, faster than they had in 2013. Years of joint training with American and British partners had sharpened their procedures. The National Counterterrorism Center had run drills. Chains of command were clearer. A specialized team called the Spear Unit, trained and funded by the U.S. State Department, moved to help secure the perimeter. But clearing a multi-story building with active shooters on unknown floors is not a drill. It is room by room, corner by corner, second by second. You don't know what's behind the next door. You don't know if the person on the other side is a hostage or a gunman. As Kenyan special forces climbed the stairwells under gunfire, how do you clear a luxury hotel when every floor could contain both hostages and militants? You shout a code word, you shout it loud and you shout it over and over so that anyone hiding behind a locked door knows that the footsteps in the hall might be rescue and not death. The men clearing the DusitD2 shouted 2 words, Eagle, Eagle, security forces. Over and over, as they climbed, as they swept offices, as they pried open bathroom doors where civilians were hiding in the dark, counting the seconds. One of those men was not Kenyan. He was British. Christian Craighead was an off-duty soldier, a member of the British Special Air Service, the SAS, one of the most respected special forces units in the world. He was in Nairobi on a training assignment when his phone rang and someone told him what was happening at the hotel. He was not ordered to go. There was no authorization. No chain of command told him to suit up. He grabbed his rifle, put on a balaclava and a vest, and drove to the scene himself. Craighead had grown up ordinary, a young man from Britain who had worked his way through the military and earned one of the hardest placements in the British Army. The SAS selection process fails over 90% of all candidates. The ones who make it through are not the biggest or the loudest. They are the ones who keep moving when everyone else stops. At 14 Riverside Drive, Craighead found local units without a clear entry plan. He didn't argue. He moved. He arrived at 14 Riverside Drive and found units at the perimeter with no cohesive plan to enter. No one was moving into the building. The gunfire inside had stalled every attempt to organize a breach. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand command. He looked at the two operators standing nearby, Dan Prastilo, a Slovenian tactical specialist, and a small group of U.S. Navy SEALs who happened to be stationed in Nairobi, and said something close to, "We're going in." They went in. As Kenyan Special Forces climbed the stairwells under gunfire, how do you clear a luxury hotel when every floor could contain both hostages and militants? You move to the wall. You stack at the corner. You communicate in hand signals because sound travels in concrete buildings and the wrong noise gets people killed. You go first through every door because hesitation in a doorway is how you die. And you shout, loud and clear, before every entry so the people hiding on the other side know whether to run toward you or away from you. Craighead's team called it out on every floor. Eagle, Eagle, security forces. The first floor they cleared, they found workers hidden under desks in a corporate office. 7 people, motionless, who hadn't moved in over an hour. Craighead moved them down a back stairwell personally, stacked them behind his body, and walked them out. The second floor was still active. A gunman had positioned himself at the far end of a hallway, elevated angle, covering the stairwell exit. Craighead did not retreat. He moved to a low position, used a doorframe for cover, closed the distance, and neutralized the threat. The hallway cleared. The team pushed up. On the 3rd floor, there was a wounded civilian in an open corridor. No cover. Active fire nearby. Craighead broke from the stack, moved into the exposed hallway, grabbed the person by their clothing, and dragged them backward into a doorway. The rest of the team covered him. Nobody stopped moving. The architecture worked against them the entire time. The DusitD2's corridors were narrow, 2 people wide at most. The stairwells were concrete boxes that turned every gunshot into an echo that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Glass-walled offices gave no hard cover. Militants had taken the high ground early, firing down from balcony landings using the vertical layout as a kill zone. Craighead had trained for exactly this. CQB, close quarters battle, is one of the SAS's core disciplines. Moving through confined spaces under fire, clearing rooms without warning the next room, keeping a team alive in an environment specifically designed to get them killed. Every door he opened, he did not know what was on the other side. He opened them anyway, floor by floor, room by room, shouting the signal, pulling people out, pushing up. He found a group of hotel guests barricaded in a bathroom on the 4th floor. They had stacked a dresser and a metal shelving unit against the door. When Craighead knocked and said the words, one of them later described hearing Eagle security forces and simply collapsing to the floor in tears. He got them moving within 30 seconds. Down the back stairwell, out through a secondary exit while the hallways above them were still being swept. When exhausted survivors finally reached evacuation points, how many attackers were still somewhere inside the smoke-filled complex? 2. After hours of floor-by-floor fighting, after Craighead had personally eliminated 2 of the 4 gunmen, the remaining pair retreated deep into the basement. They barricaded themselves in a secure room. Craighead and Kenyan GSU units tracked them down floor by floor until there was nowhere left to go. The final breach was fast. Both men were killed. The siege ended at approximately 3 a.m. on January 16th. 700 people walked out of that building alive. After nearly 20 hours of fighting, what does it take for a counter-terror unit to declare a building secure when fear still lingers behind every closed door? One more sweep, then another, every closet, every ceiling panel, every room that was already cleared, checked again, because the cost of missing one is not a paperwork error. The all-clear came slowly, the way it always does in buildings where something terrible has happened and you need to be certain it's finished. Craighead's balaclava meant almost none of the 700 people he helped rescue ever saw his face. Most of them never knew his name. That was intentional. SAS soldiers operate in anonymity by design. They enter, act, and vanish. After nearly 20 hours of fighting, what does it take for a counter-terror unit to declare a building secure when fear still lingers behind every closed door? It takes a long walk through every room, every hallway, every stairwell, bathroom, ceiling panel, and maintenance shaft. It takes checking again what you already checked, because the cost of being wrong is a body you didn't find in time. The all clear at 14 Riverside Drive did not come quickly. It came slowly, the way certainty always does in places where terrible things have happened. Christian Craighead was later awarded the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross, one of the highest military honors in Britain. Then his own government tried to stop him from telling his story. The Ministry of Defense sued him in court to prevent him from publishing a memoir. A judge agreed. His book was banned. He published a children's book instead. He called it The Wrong Wolf. The white Toyota that the cell used to surveil the complex, the one that sat for 3 weeks in front of the gates while no one asked why, was funded through a mobile money transfer of less than $700. In 2025, the 2 men who sent that money were convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison. $700. 22 lives. One soldier who showed up when no one told him to. The question that remains isn't whether special forces can stop a terrorist attack. The question is why the systems that are supposed to protect people keep needing one person to break the rules to make them work.